So far, we've talked about the micro examples, guys. Now, let's look at the other side. Let's look at why, or are we the only ones who's talking about alignment, basically? Are we the only ones who's stressing it? Is there anyone else, or has there ever been anyone else who's gone to great lengths, to achieve alignment? Let's just take a look at a few examples. So the pyramids of Giza. Yeah, you were saying, go ahead.
Before you go to the pyramids,
Yeah.
let's take two small magnets.
Yeah.
And see, like, depending on how you place them,
Right.
they're going to do certain things, right? What does that say about alignment?
Yeah, exactly.
Attraction and repelling. Yeah.
So one way you put it, it attracts. The other way, it repels. So
right.
You would align it toward a certain purpose. I mean, whether you want attraction
exactly.
or you want repulsion, you would need to know which way you have to align it to get that outcome that you desire, right?
Yeah. Same goes for like using the compass.
Oh, yeah.
Where you want to go, like, and what's your true north or what's your North Star, right? You need something in life to guide you. So that's kind of like the basic principle on which we're trying to make this macro point here.
Yeah.
Right.
So McNullity, actually, I have a personal anecdote which connects to this topic of alignment, sort of indirectly. When I was a kid, my grandfather on my mom's side, very well accomplished man, very well read man, highly literate. Self-made man, yep. Self-made man who was born in the 20s, imagine. Was a government employee with considerable influence among his peers. But at the same time was a fanatic, a mathematics fanatic. Like, he loved math. And to
pure math, like the arithmetic stuff.
Exactly. And there were, of course, a coterie of kids because this was, a joint family. So a lot of kids from different families. And so he had
I was one of them.
Yeah. And I didn't know if you wanted to come out with that, but yeah, you were one of them. So you know who I'm talking about. It is our grandfather dearest.
Yeah.
A man who is in stature, pretty big, larger than life almost. But he was also eccentric. And all of the kids were his guinea pigs, basically, because, he had all this knowledge to impart on math. And so all of these kids had to take tuitions pretty much by themselves, like an hour, 2 hours, I guess. And I always hated my sessions because I could have rather been playing cricket with you guys, having fun. But instead, now I have to spend an hour or two with him. And personality-wise, always, I don't know why there was always a clash between us. Like, the attitudes never kind of got on the same page. It was always confrontational. It was always kind of like there was an invisible chess match going on between the two of us. And I never wanted to give in to his demands. And he always wanted to try and stump me, like catch me off guard. Through all of this, through all of the torture of just being a small kid who'd rather play and not learn math of all things.
To be fair, though, he
Yeah.
had a thing for boys over the girls. Like, all his granddaughters were his, like, dearest.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas
Darlings.
the boys were
Yeah.
like, was some expendable pieces of shit.
For sure. So I sat through classes of algebra, arithmetic, blah, blah, blah. He basically had handwritten notebooks of himself, like that he jotted down from old textbooks that were falling apart. And I really hated all of it with a vengeance. I hated it with a passion. Even today, I regret the time spent, with all of those other things, except for geometry, which is the oddest and weirdest thing. I mean, back then, I hated even that, but little less. I hated it less than all the other branches, the way he was, teaching geometry to me. He basically made notes from an old-ass math book called Plane Geometry. And plane is like the 3D plane, 2D plane, PLANE, plane geometry. And he told me about that book. He said, you're never going to find this book now. It's been years, actually, that it's been out of print. I've tried extremely hard to find copies of this book. I've not been able to find, and the one copy that I've had so far has been in tatters. And so I've done whatever I could to replicate it into my notebook. And so he used to document this notebook, which was like an account ledger of sorts. And he used to basically replicate the entire textbook into it, the theorems and the questions and the diagrams, right? He used to draw the diagrams with pencils and actual instruments.
Meticulous. Yeah, he would color code them.
Color code, exactly. Like theorems would be in one color, like green color pilot pen.
Yeah.
And then axioms would be in red color pilot pen or something.
Right.
To that extent. Right. And that itself gave me pause, just to see the amount of work he was putting into it. Then he told me about this book. He said, the best thing about this book is, as far as geometry is concerned, I've not found a better book in all my life, apart from this plain geometry. And the best thing about this book is, it actually talks about geometry the way it is meant to be talked about. It actually teaches it the way it is meant to be taught. Extremely simple language. Painfully simple, almost. The kind of simplicity you couldn't find today, no matter how much you wanted to pay for it.
They might as well have said plane geometry, like the other plane.
Oh, that's a good one. Exactly. And he told me that the greatness of this book, I'm paraphrasing here, these were not his exact words, but he kind of communicated to me that the greatness of this book was in its simplicity. For me as a kid, that was the very first time that I was even encountering a correlation between greatness and simplicity.
Yeah.
Which is such a huge thing.
Yeah.
Probably in your 40s or 50s if you're lucky.
Exactly.
You would realize.
I was going to say, it's going to take a lot more wisdom and effort and life experience to get there.
Exactly.
So he was already laying that foundation for you, which is...
And not even that intention, he was just trying to pitch this book for me. Like he was just trying to pitch the book. He was saying the greatness of this book is in its simplicity. And that kind of stuck in my head. I didn't realize it back then. But as I grew older, I understood, that's where I get my correlation of greatness and simplicity from. Like, that was the seed, But then coming to the contents of the book as well, it was really that simple. It was so simple that as a kid who wanted to rather play, who wanted to be anywhere else in the world at that moment rather than there, I was still able to appreciate, how simple it was.
Beauty.
And how non-condescending it was almost. How it was like just a meeting of two souls. I'm talking about the author here, not my grandfather, the author who is communicating with you like he's just meeting another soul, like a kindred spirit. There's no assumption of superiority, there's no assumption of this intellectual barrier or anything like that.
Or like the guru-disciple kind of whole dynamic, where it's like, I'm on a level playing field with you. I'm just going to tell it like it is. And then this is how
level
simple and
plain field, a plain geometry. Exactly.
ThyGap
subscribe. And I was almost able to appreciate that to that small extent, even back then. Then I saw these simplistic diagrams and geometrical figures and the rules, just looking at how, for example, two sets of parallel lines intersect each other, and now because they are both parallel, the angle that the line forms at the top is going to be exactly the same as the angle that forms at the bottom. I don't remember. But the fact that just the way you were changing the arrangement of these lines or angles, you were getting these relationships. You were getting these consequences or side effects. And that also kind of stood out to me. Like, this is a different thing that I'm watching here. I can actually see correlation. I can actually see one thing leading to the other. I'm able to connect the dots. I can see the progression of things. Or I'm able to see the different elements and how they're aligning, with each other. And after that, of course, I kind of threw it out of my mind, got distracted with all the other shit.
Yeah.
His classes were, of course, they went on for a period of time and then they stopped. But after that, over a period of years, I still never lost my appreciation for geometry for that reason. Because for all the other branches of math, I was thinking, I'm never going to use this anyway. Trigonometry, calculus, for what I want to do in life or for what I'm interested in. I'll probably enjoy the fruits of it, good cameras.
Yeah.
But when it came to geometry, I was not able to brush it aside in the same way, because it seemed to be so fundamental to everything. Because what we're talking about is we're talking about construction of things, how you make things up. We're talking about architecture, which is all nothing but geometry. We're talking about the alignment of planets and how the distances between them have consequences or have effects on gravity. That's again a geometrical alignment, which is causing something else, some kind of side effect. And we're talking about real life examples that you might have noticed yourself, that you may be in a certain room or in a certain house, which is built in a certain way. If it is built well, and what I mean by that is if there's enough amount of light and, cross ventilation of air, basically what they try to focus on in feng shui and, vastu.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
The level of well-being of people who are living in that sort of space over a period of time versus their level of well-being being in a dingy, cramped kind of building which does not allow proper light flow or flow of air.
Yeah.
I'm sure we've seen our own examples of this, right?
I was telling you, right, here too, like in the market, kind of coming down to brass tacks on how properties are directly valued is a simple phenomenon of how high the ceiling is.
Right.
That literally makes discernible difference in people's lives, because if the ceiling is 9 feet versus 12 feet long, that makes an impact on people's like mental health almost. Like inspires like expansiveness, and it feels like energy is actually flowing through the house more. So people actually pay top dollar for high ceiling. People appreciate those things. And so it's not much of an extension to see that other forms of geometry and like placement and alignment and a crucial part. Sometimes it goes above our heads, but in things like Vastu and constructs like Vastu and Feng Shui, you can see easily how these building blocks can come together to build like something that's really powerful.
Yeah. And especially in architecture for me is like, art that affects people, over years. It's not like, you could have the most beautiful Picasso hanging on your wall and it may make you feel a certain way, but is it really going to affect the quality of your life and the life of your family and the generations that come after you because of the, the castle or the stone house or whatever you've built, but you've built in a right way, So that sort of got my fascination only higher and higher for geometry. But of course, it is credit to our grandfather. It goes all the way back to him. For a few other things as well, like correlation between simplicity and greatness, and...
language. Let's not forget. He was big into language.
He was huge into language. Oh, yeah.
Into Hindi, Telugu, English. Like he was pretty much a master of like 4 or 5 languages, I would say.
Yeah. So that was just the one thing I wanted to say. This is a personal anecdote I had about him and how like my appreciation for geometry and alignment kind of started at a very early age. The seeds were sown back then, but eventually over time, I was able to connect the dots, like going back into time and actually seeing, which is another form of alignment, right? Like you get to a stage where you're an adult man, but if you're still able to trace back the different points in your life that probably led you to a certain way of thinking or a certain perspective, that's also an alignment because then you can discover whether that was formed in the right way or, was there a misstep somewhere.
Right. Introspection, right? That's maybe about drawing lines between your present and your past.
Oh, yeah.
And how you converged onto this point, basically.
Yeah.
I guess it can be seen as geometry too.
It is.
If you're able to draw the lines out. Yeah, dude.
I think geometry, it's not easy. It's probably another episode that we could come up with. Adding to that introspection.
Geometry, it's easy.
yeah. Or geometry, it's plain.
It's plain.
All right.
Like, go nuts with the pyramids now.
So thousands of years ago, these 3 pyramids of Giza were built. And I'm not sure how many people are aware of this, but the 3 pyramids are in perfect alignment with the Orion's belt. So the Orion's belt, in case someone's not aware, they are those 3 stars kind of in, if you look at, what's that called? Ursa Major, the constellation Ursa Major or the Great Bear. And you look at the waist section of that, you have 3 stars in a line. Those 3 stars are called the Orion's belt. And these 3 stars are not in a straight line. They're a little bit, the third one is a little bit away from, like tilted away from the other 2. So when these 3 pyramids were built, they were built in exact alignment with the Orion's belt, the stars in the Orion's belt. Exactly like how one star is kind of off kilter, tilted with respect to the other 2. Over here as well, the 3rd pyramid is a bit tilted to a point where you could probably draw an imaginary line touching the tips of these pyramids with the stars of the Orion's belt. Now, the point is, why in hell would they exert so much effort? It would have costed them, we can't even imagine how much it costed them. It's debatable how they even constructed these pyramids. That'll go into a whole another topic now, which I don't want to do. But why go through the trouble, You wanted to build pyramids, you just build pyramids. Cool. Why would you need alignment of these 3 stars with the 3 stars in the Orion's belt? Why would you need alignment of the Nile, the river Nile, with the Great Pyramid? The river Nile, when they built the pyramids, used to flow just by the Great Pyramid. And actually, under the pyramid, there's this limestone aquifer, which is porous rock. And so with the rise and fall of tides, with the water going up and down through, this porous rock, there was actually static charge being built.
Oh, wow.
A natural static charge. And the funniest thing is, Nikola Tesla, when he built his prototype of, the electrical tower or something, he chose a very specific location for that. It was not randomly built. He chose to build it on an aquifer.
Okay.
So
it's an aquabody, yes.
So aquifer is basically a base of porous rock, through which water kind of can go up and down.
Percolate. Okay, I see.
Through. Yeah. So he chose to build his tower many, many years later on a similar kind of location, which had an aquifer under it, because with the movement of the tides, it was building up a static charge. And that charge could be channeled for some purpose, So why would you align your 3 pyramids to the Orion's belt with such precision? The margin of error is in 0.000 something degrees. That is
100th place, 1,000th place or something, right?
Yeah.
Decimal.
That's insane to think of. Why go through that trouble?
Ginormous.
Exactly.
Things, yeah.
Unless there was a purpose to it. Why build your pyramid on the Nile, right above an aquifer, unless there's a purpose to it? The flow of water up and down is creating a static charge. Okay. So what were they doing with the static energy that was being created? Were they trying to channel it? Were they trying to amplify it in a certain way? Were they trying to tune it in a certain way? For everything, there was a certain purpose. Look at how much purpose is kind of built into it. There's layers of purpose here. There's a purpose behind aligning these 3 pyramids to the Orion's belt. There's a purpose behind building this pyramid just by the Nile River. There's a purpose behind the design and the measurements of the pyramid itself. It's very popularly known that the pyramid actually encodes a lot of mathematical information within it.
Yeah.
Now, what could be the purpose of that? People tend to say that one of the purposes is, of course, you can figure out exactly when it was built by looking at, what the constellation was at the time, etc. Some kind of an astronomical alignment through which you can deduce it. But the larger purpose was, what if there was a cataclysm? What if there was an earth-shattering, civilization-ending apocalypse? And
how do you predict that, basically?
Well, it's not so much about predicting that, because I guess they predicted it already.
Right.
And that's the reason why they built this. Because the idea was, how do you ensure your future generations are imparted the knowledge that you have? Whatever you know about math, whatever you know about any of these other subjects, how do you make sure they get their hands on it? Can you trust paper? Can you trust scrolls? Can you trust engraved tablets? Because when we're talking about a level of destruction, right? Floods, the scale of which we can't imagine, the Ice Age, exactly. So that level of destruction, there's almost nothing that's going to survive it. All of our server farms, Google server farms, etc., nothing, all of that information that's all in all these hard drives, pretty much it's going to be lost. So we don't have a foolproof way to actually share information even today, in such an eventuality. These people way back then figured that the best way you could do is encode information. It's almost like memetics, like memes. That's what they do in memes, right? You encode meaning, which is fluid. It tends to change over time. But they encoded math. They encoded fractions. They encoded ratios. All of this into it, maybe trusting that man's inquisitive nature, man's ability to connect the dots, eventually probably will lead him to connect the dots and figure out, hang on, I'm getting a whole language out of this now. I know math now because of this pyramid thing.
Right.
So that generally it is considered to be the main purpose.
Okay.
Apart from the other main purpose being an initiation kind of a center of sorts. What that means is initiation of a certain individual or a group of people
into something.
Through attenuation of frequencies or energies. And how do you get this attenuation? By basically channeling. That's the whole reason behind aligning it with the stars. That's the whole reason behind aligning it with the river Nile. That's the whole reason behind building it on an aquifer, so that they could channel it upwards.
Right.
The basic point is, beyond being cool, kind of like an episode on
megastructure,
ancient monoliths and megastructures, etc. Look at the amount of stress, look at the amount of effort and energy these people put in for alignment.
And we still couldn't do that, by the way.
We still can't do it.
We can't cut stone that big.
Exactly.
Sure shit can't carry that. And even if you tried to like put it into the Nile and bring it to that, it's like, I mean, modern scientists have said that's like next to impossible.
Exactly.
So how did these guys go through all that effort to do it back then? And why does that precise astronomical geometrical precision important for them to, what were they trying to say basically?
I think the topical answer to your question is, like, we could rephrase it to say, what else did they have in alignment to be able to carry those rocks or the stones?
Oh, true. Isn't that true? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What other?
Because the prevailing theory is they use sound for a lot of it.
Oh, yeah. That's
sound
true.
waves.
Yeah.
So without going too deep into that, but I think, the question would be, what else did they have in alignment to be able to calculate to such a precision, to be able to get these rocks from faraway quarries?
Yeah. How did they do that?
Single stone. How did they do it? And how did they build these pyramids? Why did they build them? But one thing is undeniable. There was a purpose to it. There's a very clear purpose behind everything that they did. And it's not just these pyramids, The bigger question is, what did they achieve by aligning these pyramids with those 3 stars? That, of course, we will not know. That is a knowledge lost to time. But they wouldn't have done it without reason. It's not an instrumental or it's not an ornamental thing that they were going for.
But it could be an instrumental thing. Like
it's purely instrumental. I agree. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I was actually thinking of the word ornamental, like they're doing it just to show off, just for bragging rights. But it's not that. Yeah. It is instrumental. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. At the very least, we know it served as a purpose of a telescope or to figure out constellations and like map the sky, basically.
Mm-hmm.
At the very least, it was serving that purpose. And beyond that, it could be, like you said, like initiating people and driving up an energy or kind of channeling energy that's available.
Now let's talk about another example for alignment. I'm not sure, have you guys ever heard of ley lines?
Not me.
So McNullity and I already had a chance to kind of talk this through and discuss this, but ley lines, magnetic ley lines are actually lines on Earth's crust through which the Earth's electromagnetic energy is more specifically channeled through. These are natural lines, and it just so happens that whenever there's a release of electromagnetic energy, they tend to get channeled through these lines. Think of it as if you had a puddle of water, and you pulled a streak with your fingers. It's going to flow through that now because you created a path for it, right?
Right.
So it's almost like that. So these lines already exist like cracks. They almost look like lightning bolts, if you look from above. And the cracks on Earth's crust and electromagnetic energy tends to get more attuned, more focused through these lines. And these lines go through multiple countries. And it just so happens, weirdly enough, that some of our oldest monuments, for example, castles, churches in England or Scotland, some monuments in the US mainland, and then some monuments in India, for example, the Kedarnath temple is along a ley line. The city of Ujjain, the ancient city of Ujjain, is along a ley line. And back then in the ancient times, Ujjain was, another level, basically. But the point...
Don't they say that about Varanasi too?
Yeah.
Like that it's at the epicenter of like a main ley line or something.
Or
it was.
Any of these ancient living cities that we have, right? And not just cities, like even if you take something like Mount Kailash, which is so highly revered.
Oh, yeah, that's a major one. Yeah.
We used to call it the spine of the universe, actually, the spinal column of the universe. In Hinduism, that's what it was called. It was called Merudand.
Oh.
The idea was that it is what connects the world above and the world below. Our world is in the middle, and this kind of the structure, this holographic representation is common among the ancient Indian mythology, the Native American understanding. Yeah. There's a lot of commonalities, like South American, a lot of them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Aztec,
yeah.
It's almost like an access to Middle Earth or something, Tolkien's.
Exactly, yeah. If only that were true.
Yeah.
Oh, who knows? But
that's possible. We haven't explored.
we have,
Maybe go trekking and
yeah.
find out for yourselves.
Yeah, land up just outside Mordor.
Yeah.
But the point again is, so there are these ley lines, and now most or many of our well-known monuments, well-known physical structures have been built along these lines across the world. Why? Why would people take such trouble to align this in such a way? If the newly born country of United States wants to build their White House, they want to build their Pentagon, they want to build their Capitol Hill, why?
Wait, are you saying Pentagon's actually built on some of these ley lines?
No, not ley lines, but they've built it in a certain alignment of their own. It's a different alignment. But there also exists a very purposeful alignment between how the Washington Monument, the obelisk and that whole structure. Why are those buildings are existing in their positions for a very, very specific reason. If you go back far up into the sky, they actually will make into a picture for you.
Oh, right. Just like the pyramids do, right? If you look
just
at
like
it
the
from
pyramids
the sky,
do. Yeah.
It's like a geometrical shape. Yeah.
Just like the pyramids do. So why did they bother about this in the 17th century when they just got freedom? And they just had to build their country. Why did they go through all this trouble to build it? Because they wanted something out of that. It was a purpose. They wanted energy. They wanted power. They wanted influence. Whatever they wanted, whatever they were going for, let's just say it's probably worked out well enough for them so far.
Oh, yeah. So far. Yeah.
Until now. It's definitely worked out for them. So even our ancient temples, right? They're very purposefully built in certain locations. And even if you're not religious, even if you don't believe in God in the temple, if you just go, you can't deny, if you enter the temple complex, you don't even have to enter the main sanctum, You can just be outside in the compound, just sit, do nothing, and just sit for a while. Be in the moment. You'll actually come out replenished. You will feel some amount of replenishment that happened without your conscious effort. Something was recharged. And honestly, there are some, especially some of the oldest temples, right? Like that have been there forever in India. Especially if you go to these temples, it's an unshakable, undeniable feeling that you feel recharged to some extent. And people feel this in some of the oldest churches as well. Like I mentioned, Scotland, England, right?
Yeah.
In some of those chapels as well, people come out feeling the same. So why are different people from different cultures across different time zones going to a certain location and coming out with the same feeling? Were those places built for that specific purpose? Unless they were built for that specific purpose, this would all be one hell of a coincidence, right?
Right. Yeah.
Out of random, people are just going to a particular location and they're just all coming out refreshed, recharged, for no damn reason. It can't be.
Yeah.
It's a very deliberate alignment. So what we're looking at is, without getting again too much into depth, alignment goes that far is basically what we are trying to say in this episode.
Yeah.
Yes, it applies to us in our daily lives as well. But the greatest extent of it, the scale of it, people going through so much effort just to align certain things in a certain way. Because if you do it that way, then you get something in return.
I just wanted to add to that point, just going back to the temple thing. In Hindu temples, even if you look at where they put the idols or the murtis, they put it in a certain angle.
Yeah.
They put it in a certain way. And the shivling is supposed to be like the union of the masculine and the feminine energies coming together.
Yeah.
And which direction it's facing is important too.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of this, you have sages and monks expending a large amount of their own energy to consecrate these places.
Yeah.
To energize it in a way that it'll always pay it forward for people visiting that so-called holy place, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's like they put it in some form of a geometric alignment.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that, it serves a continuous energy purpose. That you can go, it's almost like going to a well to quench your thirst and then coming back out. And most people feel that.
Yeah.
And that's for societies, but even personally, when you want to feel energized, this ties back to fitness and all of that stuff we were talking about earlier. Taking that to the next level, if you want to like almost make a paradigm shift to your energy levels and kind of go spiritual, for lack of a better term,
Right.
they had like ancient Indians had tools even for that, and it's called yoga. Like it's almost like aligning your body and shaping your body in a certain geometric shape.
Yeah.
So as to give you like raise that kundalini energy, or so as to like touch certain aspects in your energy body.
Yeah.
Which when you return from, you feel energized. And I swear to God, like empirically speaking, I do sun salutations. Like when I'm, I had a rough night or I haven't slept, and I do 4 or 5 of these, and it literally is like putting yourself into a battery charging case and then coming out full. It's like, whoa, where did that come from? I feel lighter. I feel nimble. I feel like I can feel it here. It's like coming.
Yeah.
Breaks that lethargy state. And it's like almost like an experiment you can do on yourself, like today. Do 4 or 5 of these. And yeah, there are higher forms of these practices that you can get initiated into, and then you feel it. Even as a normal sun salutation, it's like open source, right? Like you don't have to be initiated into sun salutations.
Yeah.
You don't have to go to a guru or anything. You can do this at home, and then you would actually feel the difference.
That just reminded me of this Gujarati guy. He's a senior gentleman. He's popular around the world, actually. Recently got viral because he barely eats any food.
Yeah.
He barely eats any solid food.
Wow.
All he does is sit and stare at the sun. And he says he gets all his energy from there. And they actually checked his vitals. And there was absolutely no issue with his state of physical being, in terms of his measurements or his vitals, etc. Everything was in line.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's insane. He's actually, people have studied him, actually. Some scientists have called him on to see how basically he's pretty much like how they called Wim Hof to understand, how he does his cold water breathing thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wim Hof aligns himself by dousing himself in ice buckets, for those of you that don't know, to reach higher forms of energy.
Yeah. He taught himself Sanskrit because...
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. He had come to India when he was young. He had come down to India when he was young. He wanted to learn yoga, and he was not satisfied with, the teacher model, because he wanted to get it straight from the source. And the source was Sanskrit. So this German guy decides to learn Sanskrit on his own so he can read yoga in Sanskrit and understand it. That's where he got his breathing technique from,
Wow. Okay.
The pranayama.
And I'm sure he understood some words, given that there's commonality between German and Sanskrit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And the very thing about yoga, right? The word literally means in union. I mean...
In union with what?
It's kind of implied. In union with what? It's already implied that there are multiple things. It's already implied that there are these separate elements that are interconnected, and you have to become one with them, like in union. So yoga is as much about the physical contortions and just as much about your breathing and the prana and how you manage the prana through your body, and just as much about the mental state, your mental state of, the control you have over your mind.
Yeah.
It's all of this in union, and probably just as much about the kind of food that you put into your body, sattvic, rajasic, tamasic.
Tamasic,
So
that's true.
Yeah, our guys had it figured out way back when.
Yeah, dude, like thousands of years ago.
There's no denying it. There's no denying it. And since then, there's been corruption, of course.
Yeah. And if you think about it, like that's all for alignment for a certain purpose, right?
Yes.
Tamasic was, I guess it's like more of people's compulsions. It didn't really serve a purpose, but Rajasic did. Like for people that had to be warriors and fight battles.
Regality.
Yeah, they had to be on the Rajasic diet, which involved meat.
Yeah.
And the ones that are knowledge bearers and like more of barons of like information and knowledge, those guys tended to be on a sattvic diet.
Yeah.
And they had to align themselves to that because they can like receive information, impart knowledge, and all of that. And
everything for a specific purpose, right?
Yeah.
Everything for a very clearly defined purpose. And a great understanding of all of these disparate elements that had to be aligned to achieve your purpose. And I think that's really what we're trying to drive home in this episode, especially for someone who's young, fresh out of college, in your early 20s. If you're in India, I would say even in your late 20s and early 30s. Like, unfortunately, that's the case. Can't help it.
Hey, man, people here get married when they're 40 something, so...
Yeah.
It's like, life's just beginning, so it's fine.
I know. But That's the reason we're stressing on alignment, because even if you come away from the challenging requirements of yoga, right, where everything else needs to be in unison, that's extremely challenging in today's time.
Yeah.
But the simpler form of it in that school of thought was, again, alignment of thought, word, and action. And they used to say that if you just get these three right, that itself will simplify your life in so many ways. It's not that it'll be an easy way out. It won't be an easy way out, because you know, if you're aligned completely in your thought, word, and action, then some people are not going to like what you're going to say. You know,
Exactly.
There's going to be repercussions. But then you got to stand your ground. I mean, if it's really down to your core principles, and if it's really something you believe in. The last episode we did was on conviction, you know, and you got to stand behind your conviction.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's no point having a conviction, or there's no point having talking about it, even if you're not going to, you know, walk your talk. So it is going to simplify your life over and above all that bullshit. Just the alignment between thought, word, and action. And we actually already went into detail in this in our 2-part special episode, Measure of Man. ThyGap, subscribe and share. Check it out.
Yeah, that was a good episode. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it really gets slept on, because I can totally understand, like, you know, for a layman, because you listen to podcasts because you want to kill time, right? Like, you want something to be running while you're doing your chores. This kind of shit is like, you got to leave everything and you got to actually sit and listen to the words and take it in, and it's going to be unpleasant. It's going to be extremely unpleasant if you really
internalize.
If you really internalize. And my late 20s, McNullity, actually, I don't know if I ever told you this, but my idea about who I was, and
you're like a fucking onion. Like, every time I talk to you, a layer comes off. So that's nice. You never keep yourself boring, so that's good.
No, I mean, I think you're the same way, actually. And I think that's why we got on from way back when. But, you know, my late 20s was actually the most turbulent phase for me, where it was very like, things were in the process of being crystallized. Like, I was finally getting to a point where I had a clearer understanding of what my boundaries were, you know, like what my measure was. What exactly did I stand for? What exactly don't I stand for? What can I tolerate? What would I absolutely not tolerate? Like, you know, what would I throw everything on the line for in this world? You know,
essentially your value system.
Exactly.
That you had to make for yourself. Yeah.
So all of that was kind of getting crystallized in my late 20s, because up until then, I was kind of like a sponge. I was trying to soak in as much information, as much knowledge, because I didn't want to just, you know, get into an echo chamber and just have confirmation bias and, you know, just jump to conclusions and like, now I'm this, now I'm that. And I'm just going to argue on from that point on. I just wanted to figure out like what exactly was happening on both sides, or, you know, however many sides there are, to sort of try and come down to, but it was very unpleasant. I did not enjoy it one bit. And the reason I'm saying this is because some of these episodes that we do, like Measure of Man, I'm talking directly to the audience here, to the listeners. McNullity doesn't need this, but if you're young, if you're fresh out of college, if you're just forming, you know, if you're just figuring out who you are as a man, there are some episodes we've done which are not clickbait. They're not popcorn entertainment. In fact, they go the opposite route, which is they may be unpleasant. They may fuck up your day, but it's all worth it, you know.
Tough love. It's tough love for the audience.
It is tough love, and it is all worth it. And so is this alignment. And that's the reason why usually it's not easy episodes. McNullity, we just like to keep it to 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And that's about it.
My bad.
No.
Down rabbit holes. My bad.
No, I think it was required for this episode. And quite frankly, before we got into it, I had no clue that we would go this deep into it.
Right.
I thought we'd be just like, 3 reasons why it's not easy: attention span, TikTok, and, you know, third thing, something else, social media, and just wrap it up. That's why you got to be aligned. But this is, go ahead.
You see, when our value systems align, we get to go deeper. So that's the purpose. That's it.
That's such a great point, because the one thing that makes it not easy is appetite for depth. If you guys don't have any appetite for anything below the surface level, forget about alignment, forget about pretty much many topics that we talked about actually in this podcast. And that's the reason why you should check them all out, because they're all aligned in one way or the other. They're all connected, you know.
It's a plug for all of our episodes.
A plug for everything. ThyGap, subscribe and share. All right.
Perfect.
But I think we kind of got through it all eventually.
I think so. I think we did a pretty good job of being comprehensive about everything we wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you think was left unsaid? Anything else you want to add?
I think it's a topic on its own because you talked about how you're, in your late 20s, you had like a tumultuous period where you were like amalgamating everything that came in your wake, essentially.
Yeah.
And I think that lends itself well to a topic called judgment.
Ooh.
And I don't want to open that can of worms in this episode, so we'll save that for judgment. It's not easy as its own thing.
It was already on our list, believe it or not.
Segue.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, judgment was already on our list. Like, we're not leaving anything.
Oh, dude, this guy's got it covered. He's for real.
Nah, it's ThyGap. It's Brute and myself. We came up with a list of topics, and judgment was one of them.
Yeah. Oh wow, nice. Yeah.
And we don't want to leave anything to chance until, of course, we get a lot of followers and subscribers and money. So
the moolah.
The moolah. Yeah, that's where it's at.
Yeah.
All right, so that about covers our episode. I'm not still sure if this is going to be one episode or 2 episodes. We'll see. But overall, on why alignment, it's not easy. McNullity, I want to thank you once again for joining ThyGap Podcast. It's always great to have you because you always have your own perspective to add, and that's always great.
It's been a blast. I'm so glad you thought of me for this. This was so enjoyable. And it really literally makes my weeks and months because this is the stuff that I also want to somewhere want to talk about. So it gives me that opportunity to share with you and collaborate with you in this way. So it's been a total blast. Honestly saying, thank you.
I can't wait for our episode on Dune because that's coming up, guys.
That's gonna be epic.
That's gonna come up.
Yeah. All the Nolan's followers, watch out.
Oh, yeah. All right. So, as we always say, ladies and gentlemen, at the end of our episodes, ThyGap Podcast, subscribe and share.